I got you pregnant on purpose, you're mine forever now, Billionaire CEO told his maid. You got me pregnant on purpose. My voice shook as I backed away from him, hands instinctively covering my still flat stomach. The evidence was there in his eyes, not surprise but satisfaction. Calculation. Nikolai Volkov, billionaire CEO and the most dangerous man I'd ever met, stood before me without a hint of remorse. His ice-blue eyes held mine, unwavering. Yes, one word, no apology. Just calm confirmation of the ultimate betrayal. The first night we were together, you didn't use protection. You never used protection. My voice rose with each word, fury and disbelief warring inside me. You did this deliberately to trap me. He moved toward me with that predatory grace that had both terrified and fascinated me from the beginning. I told you from the beginning, Mila. You're mine. I claimed you, and I needed to make sure that claim was permanent, unbreakable. A child binds you to me in ways nothing else could. Have you ever felt completely powerless while someone else controlled your fate? Have you ever found yourself caught in a web so intricately spun that by the time you realized you were trapped, it was already too late? This is my story. A tale of how I went from being an invisible maid scrubbing floors to carrying the air of one of London's most powerful men. A story of manipulation, possession, and a love so twisted it would forever change who I was. If you want to hear how a single spilled cup of tea altered the course of my entire life, like this video and subscribe now. Trust me, nothing in this story is what you expect. 3 months earlier I was nobody, just another immigrant trying to survive in a city that didn't care whether I lived or died. My name is Mila Sorokina, and my story begins on my knees, scrubbing the marble floors of the Volkov estate for the 3rd time that week. My hands were raw and cracked from the harsh cleaners Mrs. Petrova insisted we use. Nothing but perfection for Mr. Volkov's home. The chemical smell burned my nostrils, mixing with notes of imported leather and something darker, more expensive that I couldn't name. Power, wealth, danger. I was invisible here, just another pair of hands maintaining the pristine facade of a world I'd never belonged to. My stomach growled painfully, a reminder that I'd skipped breakfast again to send money back to Mama in St. Petersburg. I hadn't always lived like this, desperate and hungry in a foreign country. Back in Russia, I'd been a university student studying literature, with dreams of becoming a professor someday. Then my father's gambling debts caught up to our family. One night, he simply disappeared, leaving Mama and me to face the loan sharks alone. We sold everything we owned to pay them off, but it wasn't enough. Then Mama's heart began to fail. The doctors in St. Petersburg said she needed an expensive procedure, one the public hospitals wouldn't cover. I dropped out of university immediately, took 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night. It still wasn't enough. When I heard about housekeeping jobs in London that paid triple what I could make in Russia, I didn't hesitate. I sold our last valuable possession, my grandmother's wedding ring, to buy a plane ticket and spent my first month in London sleeping on the floor of a flat shared with 6 other immigrant women. The position at the Volkov estate paid better than anything else I could find with my limited English, but it meant 16-hour days and a body that ached in places I didn't know could hurt. Every penny beyond my rent and bare necessities went straight to Mama's medical bills. It still wasn't enough. The doctors were now saying she needed an experimental procedure, one that cost more than I could earn in 5 years. Girl! Mrs. Petrova's sharp voice sliced through my thoughts. The master's study. He spilled tea on the Persian rug. Handle it immediately. My heart plummeted. The master's study. I'd been working here for 3 months and had successfully avoided ever being alone with Nikolai Volkov. I'd seen him, of course, impossible not to. He moved through the house like a winter storm, always surrounded by men with cold eyes and concealed weapons. I'd learned to make myself smaller, quieter, practically disappearing into the walls when he passed. But I'd noticed things. The way everyone's voice dropped to whispers when he entered a room. How even Mrs. Petrova, who ruled the household staff with an iron fist, became deferential in his presence. The late-night meetings in his study where raised voices made me work faster, pray harder that I'd never be noticed. Now, girl, before it sets. I gathered my supplies with trembling hands and made my way through the labyrinth of hallways. The house was a fortress disguised as a mansion. I'd counted at least 12 security cameras in the areas I was permitted to clean, and there were always men stationed at strategic points, speaking in rapid Russian. The study door was slightly ajar. I knocked softly, my knuckles barely making a sound against the heavy wood. Enter. His voice was like black ice. Smooth, cold, and dangerous. I pushed the door open, keeping my eyes down, and immediately detected it. The rich, intoxicating scent of expensive cologne mixed with cigar smoke, and that same leather smell that permeated the entire house. And black tea bleeding into the intricate patterns of a rug worth more than my entire life. I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Volkov. Mrs. Petrova sent me to. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. My breath caught. Slowly, I raised my eyes from the stained rug to the man sitting behind the massive desk. Nikolai Volkov was younger than I'd expected for someone who commanded such fear. Maybe 35 at most. His dark hair was swept back, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. And his eyes, God. His eyes were the color of a frozen lake. Blue so pale they were almost silver, burning with an intensity that made my skin prickle. He wore a charcoal suit with the jacket discarded. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with intricate tattoos I couldn't quite make out from this distance. He was beautiful in the way a Siberian winter was beautiful, mesmerizing, dangerous, absolutely lethal. What's your name? He leaned back in his chair, those pale eyes studying me with an attention that made me want to bolt. Mila, sir. Mila Sorokina. How long have you been working in my house, Mila Sorokina? 3 months, sir. My voice came out barely above a whisper. I clutched the cleaning supplies tighter as if they could somehow shield me. 3 months, he repeated slowly, tasting each syllable. And I'm only noticing you now. That's interesting. Something in his tone made my pulse quicken with a fear I couldn't name. I watched as he stood, moving around the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. He was tall, much taller than me, and as he approached, I caught the full impact of his presence. Power rolled off him in waves. The rug, sir. I should. Tell me, Mila, why do you work 2 jobs? He stopped just a few feet away, close enough that I could see the fine lines around his eyes, a small scar near his left temple. My mouth went dry. How do you? I know everything that happens in my house. Everything about everyone who enters it. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Your mother is ill. Heart failure. The treatments aren't affordable in Russia. You're drowning in debt. Working yourself to death to save a woman who is perhaps a year left. Tears burned behind my eyes. Hearing it said so bluntly made the reality crash over me like an icy wave. I need this job, Mr. Volkov. Please, I'll work harder. I won't. Relax. The word was a command, not a comfort. I'm not firing you. I'm simply curious. You're different from the others. Quieter. You actually try to disappear. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I find that refreshing. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Instead, I knelt and began working on the tea stain, focusing every ounce of my attention on the task. My hands trembled as I applied the solution, scrubbing in careful circles. I felt him watching me, felt the weight of his gaze like physical pressure on the back of my neck, sliding down my spine. The study was too quiet. We were alone, truly alone, and that realization made my breath come shorter. You have delicate hands. His voice came from directly behind me now, and I nearly jumped. Too delicate for this kind of work. They're strong enough, sir. I kept scrubbing, kept my eyes on the rug. Are they? I heard him move, and then he was crouching beside me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He reached out, and before I could pull away, his fingers caught my wrist. His touch was firm, commanding, burning against my skin. These hands tell a story of someone who works too hard for too little. Someone who's forgotten what it feels like to be taken care of. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to keep me in place. Not painful, but absolutely unyielding. "Mr. Volkov, please." "Nikolai." His thumb brushed across the inside of my wrist, over my racing pulse. "When we're alone, you'll call me Nikolai." "That's not appropriate." "I decide what's appropriate in my house, malenkaya ptichka. Do you understand?" There was steel beneath the smooth tone. A promise of consequences if I argued. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good girl." He released my wrist, and I immediately missed the warmth of his touch. A thought that terrified me more than anything else that had happened. "Finish the rug, then come to the kitchen. I'm going to make sure you eat something before you collapse on my marble floors." "I'm fine." That wasn't a request. He stood and walked back to his desk, effectively dismissing me while simultaneously making it clear I wasn't free to leave. I returned to my work with shaking hands, hyper-aware of his continued presence, the way he occasionally looked up to watch me. Every nerve in my body was screaming danger, but there was something else too, something warm and dangerous unfurling in my chest. The way he'd touched me, the concern in his voice when he'd mentioned food. No one had cared about whether I ate in months. What would you sacrifice to save someone you love? Your dignity? Your freedom? Your body? These are the questions that haunt those of us forced to make impossible choices. And as I knelt on that rug under the watchful eye of Nikolai Volkov, I had no idea that my first impossible choice was just moments away. I finished cleaning the stain and gathered my supplies, hoping he had forgotten his command about the kitchen. He hadn't. "The kitchen, Mila." "Now." He didn't even look up from his computer. "Ivan is waiting to escort you." Sure enough, when I stepped into the hallway, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a blank expression stood waiting. Without a word, he led me through corridors I'd cleaned but never really seen. Past priceless artwork, beneath crystal chandeliers that cost more than I would earn in a lifetime. The kitchen was empty except for Ivan, who nodded at me from his position by the window. On the marble island sat a covered plate, still warm, and a glass of fresh juice. I approached it carefully as if it might bite. Beef stroganoff, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. The smell alone made my stomach cramp with hunger. I ate mechanically, too aware of Ivan's watchful presence, too confused by this sudden attention. Why would Nikolai Volkov care if his maid ate? Why would he notice me at all? I was nearly finished when I heard footsteps. Nikolai entered the kitchen, his phone still pressed to his ear, and my entire body went rigid. He ended the call, slipped the phone into his pocket, and leaned against the counter across from me. "Better." I nodded, unable to form words. "Good. You're going to start eating regular meals. I won't have my employees fainting from malnutrition." He crossed his arms, the movement pulling his shirt taut across his chest. "From now on, you'll take your lunch here. Ivan will make sure you're fed properly." "Mr. Nikolai, that's really not necessary. I know what's necessary in my own house." His tone brooked no argument. "You're too thin, too pale. You're going to make yourself sick, and then you'll be no use to anyone, least of all your mother." The mention of Mama made my throat tight. "I can take care of myself." "Can you?" He pushed off the counter and crossed to me in 3 long strides. His hand was beneath my chin, tilting my face up to his. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but there was possession in it too. Ownership. "When was the last time someone took care of you, malenkaya ptichka? When was the last time you let yourself be vulnerable enough to need someone?" "I don't need. Everyone needs someone." His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and electricity shot through my entire body. "The question is whether you're brave enough to accept help when it's offered." I should have pulled away, should have remembered my place, remembered the danger. But I was so tired, so alone. And the way he was looking at me like I mattered, like I was something precious rather than disposable, it was intoxicating. "Why are you being kind to me?" Something flickered in his eyes. Something dark and possessive that should have terrified me. "Because you're mine to protect now. You just don't know it yet." His words haunted me for the next 3 days. "You're mine to protect now." What did that mean? I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just the way wealthy men talked, possessive of everything in their domain, even the staff. But the way he'd looked at me, touched me. It felt personal in a way that made my skin tingle hours later. I went back to my routines, cleaning the endless rooms of the Volkov estate, sending money to Mama, collapsing into my tiny flat each night. But something had changed. I felt his eyes on me even when he wasn't there. Noticed how other staff members looked at me differently, with curiosity or sometimes suspicion. On the third day, Mrs. Petrova found me cleaning one of the guest bathrooms. "Mr. Volkov wants to see you in his study." Immediately, my stomach dropped. Did I do something wrong? She just shook her head, her expression unreadable. "Go. Don't keep him waiting." The door to his study was closed. I knocked, heard his voice tell me to enter, and stepped into what felt like a wolf's den. Nikolai was standing by the window, backlit by the gray winter sky. He didn't turn when I entered, just continued staring out at the snow-covered grounds. "Close the door." I did, the soft click sounding like a death knell. "Lock it." My hand froze on the doorknob. "Lock the door, Mila." Each word was precisely enunciated, leaving no room for argument. With shaking fingers, I turned the lock. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, and I realized with crystalline clarity that I'd just trapped myself in a room with the most dangerous man I'd ever met. Nikolai finally turned to face me, and the look in his eyes made my breath stop. It was hunger, raw, barely restrained, absolutely possessive. "Come here." I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. He crossed the distance between us in seconds, and then his hands were on my face, tilting it up to his, and his mouth was crushing down on mine in a kiss that stole what little air I had left in my lungs. I should have pushed him away, should have screamed, fought, done anything except what I actually did, which was melt into him like I'd been waiting my entire life for this moment. His kiss was demanding, possessive, claiming me with an intensity that made my knees buckle. His arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I gasped against his mouth. He took advantage immediately, his tongue sweeping in to explore every corner of my mouth like he was memorizing it. When he finally pulled back, I was dizzy, my lips swollen, and my heart racing. "That's better," he murmured, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time I saw you on your knees in my hallway." "This is wrong," I managed to whisper, even as my body betrayed me by leaning into his touch. "You're my employer. I could lose my job. You're not going to lose anything. Quite the opposite." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, pressing it into my hands. I opened it with trembling fingers and nearly dropped it when I saw what was inside. Cash. Thousands of pounds in cash. "What is this?" "Your mother's treatment. The experimental procedure her doctors mentioned but said was too expensive. It's arranged. She starts next week." Tears blurred my vision. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "Yes, you can. And you will." His hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. "Do you understand what I'm offering you, Mila? I'm offering you hope. The future. All you have to do is let me take care of you." "Why? Why would you do this for someone like me? You don't even know me." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "But I do know you. I've had you investigated since the day you walked through my doors. I know about your father's gambling debts that left your family destitute. I know about the years you spent taking care of your mother while working 3 jobs. I know about the scholarship you lost when she got worse and you had to drop everything to care for her. I know everything, Malenkaya Ptichka. The invasion of my privacy should have outraged me. Instead, all I felt was a strange sense of relief. He knew the worst parts of me, the broken pieces, and he was still here, still looking at me like I was something valuable. "That's insane," I breathed. "You barely know me, and you're offering to pay for my mother's treatment. What do you want in return?" His smile was slow, predatory. "You're intelligent enough to know that nothing in life is free, especially not from men like me." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, leaving fire in its wake. I want you, Mila. In my bed, in my life. Mine in every way that matters. The room tilted. You want me to be your what? Your mistress. No. The word was sharp, definitive. A mistress is temporary, disposable. What I want from you is far more permanent. He leaned in, his lips brushing the shell of my ear, and I felt his words more than heard them. I want you to belong to me completely. Your body, your time, your loyalty. In exchange, I'll give you everything. Your mother will have the best care money can buy. You'll never have to scrub another floor or wear yourself down to nothing trying to survive. You'll live here with me, and you'll want for nothing. My mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. Men like Nikolai Volkov didn't make offers like this to women like me. This is crazy. You could have anyone. I don't want them. His voice turned hard, possessive. I want you. I've wanted you since I saw you making yourself small in my hallways, trying so desperately to be invisible. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone sees the power, the money, the fear I command, but you. He pulled back to look at me, his ice blue eyes burning. You just wanted to survive. And I'm going to keep you. I need time to think. No. His hands slid to the back of my neck, holding me in place. Your mother starts treatment next week. That gives you until Sunday to decide. Either you accept my offer and move into the East Wing by Monday morning, or you walk away and I never bother you again. But understand this, Mila. If you walk away from everything. The treatment, the money, this. He kissed me again, slower this time but no less devastating. All of it disappears. It was an ultimatum dressed up as a choice. Accept his terms or watch my mother die knowing I could have saved her. That's not fair, I whispered against his lips. Life rarely is malinka ptichka, but I'm offering you a way out. A way to save her and yourself. All you have to do is trust me. Trust him. Trust an oligarch who dealt in violence and power, who was offering me a golden cage in exchange for my freedom. It was insane, reckless, dangerous. This story is about to take a turn that will challenge everything you believe about power, choice, and love. Subscribe now to hear how far Mila goes to save her mother. Like this video if you've ever had to make an impossible choice for someone you love. That night, I sat at Mama's bedside in the hospital, holding her frail hand. She looked so small against the white sheets, her once vibrant face hollowed by illness and pain. You look tired, Malaya Moya, she whispered, reaching up to touch my cheek. You work too hard. I forced a smile. I'm fine, Mama, but I have news. Good news. Her eyes brightened slightly. Tell me. I found a donor. Someone who's willing to pay for the experimental treatment. The one Dr. Petrov mentioned. I swallowed hard. You start next week. Her eyes filled with tears. Who would do such a thing? We don't know anyone with that kind of money. It's a foundation for Russian immigrants with medical needs. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. They want to remain anonymous. She didn't question it further. She was too overwhelmed with gratitude, with the sudden prospect of life after months of preparing for death. She clasped my hand tightly and thanked God for the miracle. I didn't tell her that I was the sacrifice, that my body was the currency buying her life. I spent the weekend in a fog of indecision and denial. I paced my tiny flat, arguing with myself. Could I do this? Become the possession of a man I barely knew? Sell myself to save my mother? But was it really selling myself if part of me wanted this? If part of me had been thinking about Nikolai's kiss, his touch? The way he looked at me like I was something precious? Sunday evening, I packed my meager belongings into 2 suitcases. Most of my clothes were worn, faded, not fit for the life Nikolai was offering. I kept photos, a few books, my mother's matryoshka dolls. Things that mattered, that remembered who I was before all this. I didn't sleep that night. Monday morning arrived with brutal inevitability. At exactly 8 a.m., there was a knock at my door. Ivan stood in the hallway, his expression carefully blank. Mr. Volkov sent me to collect you, miss. Are you ready? Was I? Could anyone ever be ready to step into a life like this? I nodded, grabbed my suitcases, and followed him down to the waiting car. The ride back to the estate felt both too long and far too short. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My mind kept running through every possible scenario, each one more terrifying than the last. Nikolai was waiting in his study when Ivan delivered me. He stood when I entered, his eyes taking in every detail of my appearance. "You came." There was no surprise in his voice, only satisfaction. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I knew you would." He crossed to me, his fingers trailing down my cheek to my throat, feeling my racing pulse. "Because you're smart enough to recognize opportunity when it presents itself. And because whether you want to admit it or not, you want this too. I'm here for my mother. You're here for multiple reasons, malenkaya ptichka. Your mother is one of them. This." He pulled me flush against him, his hand sliding possessively around my waist. "Is another." He kissed me again, deeper this time, taking his time to explore and claim. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "The East Wing has been prepared for you. Your own suite, bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, everything you could need. But understand something, Mila." His hand tightened on my waist. "Those rooms are yours for privacy, for comfort. But your nights, those belong to me." Heat flooded my face. "I need time to adjust. You'll have it. I'm not a monster, despite what you might think." His thumb brushed across my lower lip. "I can be patient when properly motivated. But make no mistake, you're mine now. Every man who sees you will know it. Every woman who looks at you will understand that you're under my protection. And anyone who tries to touch what's mine will learn very quickly why people fear the Volkov name." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. The next 2 months were like living in a dream. Nikolai introduced me to his world gradually, bringing me to dinners with his associates, opera performances, private art showings. I wore clothes worth more than I'd earned in a year, ate at restaurants where a single meal cost more than my old monthly rent. Every night, I slept in his bed, wrapped in his arms. He was patient, as promised, allowing me time to adjust before our relationship became physical. When it finally did, it was with an intensity that left me breathless, claimed, absolutely his. I was learning him, the way he took his coffee, black with a single sugar. How his accent thickened when he was angry or aroused. The nightmares that sometimes woke him, leaving him tense and unreachable until I touched him, reminding him where he was. I learned about his business too, parts of it anyway. The legitimate side, real estate developments, shipping companies, tech investments, and glimpses of the rest. Conversations that stopped when I entered a room, men who visited at odd hours, the gun he kept in his bedside drawer. He was dangerous in many ways, but he was also a man, complicated and damaged and trying to protect something he valued in the only way he knew how. Have you ever found yourself caring for someone you know you should hate? Have you ever lain in the arms of a devil and felt safer than you've ever felt before? These are the contradictions that defined my new life, the blurring lines between captivity and freedom, between obligation and desire. I visited Mama each week, watched the color return to her cheeks as the treatment began working. She marveled at my new clothes, my healthier appearance. I told her I'd been promoted to household manager at the estate. Another lie to protect her from the truth. One evening in early spring, exactly 3 months after I'd moved in, everything changed. I woke to an empty bed and the sound of raised voices downstairs. Pulling on one of Nikolai's shirts, I crept to the door and listened. Russian, rapid and furious, punctuated by what sounded like glass shattering. Something was wrong, very wrong. I found Tatiana, the housekeeper, in the hallway, her face pale. "Miss Mila, you should stay in your room. What's happening?" "There's been an incident with one of Mr. Volkov's business rivals. He's handling it." Before I could ask more, Nikolai appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression thunderous. Blood spattered his white shirt. Not his blood, I realized with sick certainty. His eyes found mine, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Mila, my study. Now. I followed him on shaking legs. Inside, he closed the door and turned to face me, his control visibly fraying. There's been a complication. The Kozakov syndicate has put a price on my head. A business disagreement that escalated. He ran a hand through his hair. They've made threats against anyone close to me, which means you're in danger. Fear crawled up my spine. What kind of danger? The kind that gets people killed. His hands settled on my shoulders. I'm doubling your security. You don't leave this house without at least 4 guards. You don't go anywhere I haven't personally approved. And if I say run, you run. No questions. Understand? Nikolai, I won't let them touch you. His voice turned hard, deadly. I'll burn their entire organization to the ground before I let them hurt you. But you need to be smart. Need to follow my rules exactly. The next week was a nightmare of paranoia and tension. Armed guards patrolled the grounds constantly. Every delivery was searched. I wasn't allowed outside at all. Nikolai barely slept, spending his nights on phone calls and in meetings, orchestrating whatever moves were necessary to end the threat. And then, 8 days after the threats began, Nikolai came to find me in the library. His expression was strange. Satisfied, but also troubled. It's over. The Kozakov matter has been resolved. The threat is lifted. Relief flooded through me. Thank God. What changed? I gave them something they wanted more than my blood. He sat beside me, taking my hand. But there's something else. Something you need to know. The way he said it made my stomach clench with dread. What? You're pregnant. The world tilted. What? That's impossible. We've only been together for... I know exactly how long it's been. His hand settled on my stomach, possessive and gentle. I had the doctor run tests when you mentioned feeling unwell yesterday. The results came back an hour ago. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Pregnant. I was pregnant with Nikolai Volkov's child. This changes everything, he continued, his voice soft but absolute. You're not just mine now, Mila. You're carrying my heir, my child. That makes you family in the truest sense. That makes you untouchable. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully, at the satisfaction in his eyes, the lack of surprise. You knew, I whispered, horror dawning. You knew this would happen. You wanted this. His expression didn't change. Yes. The first night we were together, you didn't use protection. You never used protection. My voice rose with each word. You got me pregnant on purpose. Yes. No shame, no apology, just calm confirmation. I told you from the beginning, Mila. You're mine. I claimed you, and I needed to make sure that claim was permanent, unbreakable. A child binds you to me in ways that nothing else could. I stood, backing away from him, fury and betrayal roaring in my chest. You manipulated me. You used me. You took away my choice. I gave you everything you needed. He stood too, his expression hardening. Your mother is alive and thriving. You're safe, protected, provided for. You have a home, security, a future. And now you're carrying my child. You'll be the mother of the next Volkov heir. Do you understand what that means? The power that gives you, the protection? I don't want power. I wanted a choice. Tears streamed down my face. You trapped me. You made sure I could never leave. Yes. He closed the distance between us, his hands framing my face, forcing me to look at him. Because I love you, Mila. I fell in love with you the moment I saw you trying to disappear in my hallways. And I knew I'd do whatever it took to keep you, including this. That's not love. That's obsession. Possession. In my world, they're the same thing. His thumbs brushed away my tears. I'm not going to apologize for ensuring you'd never leave, for binding you to me permanently. You're mine, malinka ptichka. Mine forever. And our child will cement that bond. I hate you. The words were bitter on my tongue. No, you don't. His voice was soft. You're angry. Yes. Betrayed. Absolutely. But you don't hate me. If you did, you wouldn't be crying. You'd be plotting. His lips brushed against my forehead. You'll forgive me eventually. When you hold our child in your arms, when you see how much I love both of you, when you understand that everything I've done has been to protect this family, you'll forgive me. This relationship has just crossed into dangerous territory. Like this video if you're as shocked as I was when I first heard this story. Drop a comment below if you think what Nikolai did is unforgivable, or if you understand his twisted reasoning. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. My body changed in ways I wasn't prepared for, the morning sickness, the exhaustion, the emotional upheaval. But through it all, Nikolai was there. He held my hair back when I was sick. He canceled meetings to sit with me when the anxiety became too much. He had the estate chef prepare whatever strange food I craved at any hour. And slowly, against every ounce of my better judgment, my anger began to fade into something more complicated. I couldn't forgive what he'd done. The manipulation, the calculated way he'd gotten me pregnant to trap me permanently. It was unforgivable. But I also couldn't deny that he'd been right about certain things. I was protected here in ways I'd never been in my life. My mother was thriving, the treatment working better than anyone had hoped. And Nikolai loved me with an intensity that was both terrifying and oddly comforting. One evening, when I was almost 5 months along, Nikolai found me on the terrace watching the sunset. He looked exhausted, the weight of his world evident in the lines around his eyes. "Can I sit with you?" he asked quietly. I nodded, and he settled beside me, his hand immediately finding mine. "I was 9 when my mother died," he said suddenly. "My father was not a gentle man. When she was gone, there was no buffer between his rage and me." He touched the scar near his temple. "The day I was strong enough to fight back was the day he had me sent to military school. I learned early that power is the only true protection." I squeezed his hand, not speaking, just listening. "When I built all this," he gestured to the estate around us, "I swore I would never be vulnerable again. I built walls, refused to let anyone matter. And then you walked into my house." His jaw clenched. "You shattered everything I'd spent 20 years building." "Nikolai, let me finish." His voice was rough with emotion. "I knew I was falling for you. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't stop myself. And when I realized you might leave once your mother was stable, once you didn't need my money anymore, the thought of losing you made me desperate. Made me do something unforgivable." He turned to face me, his eyes intense. "I got you pregnant on purpose because I couldn't bear the thought of you leaving. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was manipulative, but I also knew that I couldn't survive in a world where you weren't mine." Tears blurred my vision. "You should be sorry. I know a better man would be." His hand moved to my stomach, settling over the small bump. "But I'm not a better man. I'm a selfish bastard who saw something beautiful and claimed it before anyone else could." I covered his hand with mine, feeling the flutter of movement beneath our palms. Our baby, the child we'd created, wanted or not. "I should hate you," I whispered. "But you don't." It wasn't a question. "No, I don't." The admission felt like defeat and liberation all at once. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I don't hate you. I think I might love you, which makes me as twisted as you are." His sharp intake of breath told me he hadn't expected that. "Say it again." "I love you." The words came easier the second time. "I love you even though you're controlling and possessive, and you manipulated me in the worst possible way. I love you because you see me, really see me, and you've never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am." He kissed me then, deep and claiming and somehow gentle all at once. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life," he said roughly. "More than power, more than wealth, more than my own survival. You and our child, you're everything now. I need you to promise me something," I said quietly. "Anything. No more manipulation. No more taking away my choices. If we're going to do this, raise a child together, build a life, I need to know you'll be honest with me, even when the truth is ugly." He was quiet for a long moment. "I can promise I'll try," But I can't promise I won't be overprotective. It's who I am, Mila. Then I'll promise to fight back when you go too far. To remind you that I'm your partner, not your possession. I met his eyes steadily. A slow smile curved his lips. We're going to fight constantly. Probably. It's going to be messy and complicated. Almost certainly. He pulled me close, his hand protective over our child. But it's going to be real. No games, no pretending. Just us figuring this out together. Together, I agreed. Our daughter was born in autumn, as the first snow began to fall over London. After 14 hours of labor, Nikolai holding my hand through every contraction, Anastasia Nikolaevna Volkova entered the world screaming with indignation. She's beautiful, he breathed, watching as the nurses cleaned her. She's perfect, Mila. She's ours. They placed her in my arms, and I fell completely in love. She had Nikolai's pale eyes and my dark hair, and when she wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, I saw something I never expected to see. Nikolai Volkov, the man everyone feared, completely undone by 5 pounds of new life. I'd burn the world down for both of you, he whispered, pressing his lips to my forehead. Anyone who ever tries to hurt either of you will learn exactly what happens when you threaten what belongs to me. I should have been troubled by his words, by the possessiveness that still colored everything he said. Instead, I found comfort in it. In this dangerous, complicated world we'd built together, his fierce protection was our shelter. 3 years later, I stood on the terrace of our home in Geneva, watching Nikolai chase our daughter through the garden. Anastasia's laughter floated up to me, bright and carefree. My mother sat nearby, healthier than she'd been in years, smiling as she watched her granddaughter play. We'd left London 6 months after Anastasia was born. Nikolai had decided it was time to legitimize his business interests, to create a safer world for his daughter to grow up in. We weren't naive. Some parts of his empire would always operate in shadows. But he was trying, truly trying, to build something cleaner for Anastasia's future. Mama, watch me, my daughter called up to me, her face alight with joy as Nikolai swung her high in the air. I waved, my heart so full it ached. This was my life now. So far from the desperate existence I'd known scrubbing floors at the Volkov estate. I still thought about that day sometimes, when Nikolai had offered me his devil's bargain. The day I'd traded my freedom for my mother's life and unwittingly stepped into a different kind of freedom altogether. Nikolai looked up, catching my eye across the distance. Even now, after all this time, his gaze held the same intensity, the same possessiveness. But I'd learned to match it with my own strength. We fought often, as predicted, his need to control colliding with my refusal to be controlled. But we loved with equal passion, and that made all the difference. That evening, after Anastasia was tucked into bed, Nikolai found me in our bedroom. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand behind me, his arms encircling my waist. "The day we met. The rug you ruined just to get me alone." He chuckled against my hair. "Best cup of tea I ever spilled." "You're still not sorry, are you? About any of it?" "No." His honesty was one promise he'd kept faithfully. "I regret hurting you. I regret the pain I caused. But I will never regret doing what was necessary to keep you." I turned in his arms. "You know I would have stayed anyway, eventually, if you'd just given me time, given me a choice. Perhaps." His fingers traced my cheek. "But I've never been a patient man, malenkaya ptichka, and I couldn't take that chance." I shook my head, but there was no anger left, only a rueful acceptance of who he was, who we were together. "I love you," he said softly. "More today than yesterday. More tomorrow than today. I love you too." I reached up to touch the small scar near his temple, the mark of the boy he'd been, the man he'd become. "Even though you're still the most controlling, possessive man I've ever known." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face, that few people ever saw. "And you're still the only person who dares to tell me so to my face." Nikolai had told me once that he'd gotten me pregnant on purpose, that I was his forever. At the time, It had felt like a curse, a trap I'd never escape. Now, years later, with our daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, and our lives intertwined in ways I never could have imagined, I understood a truth I'd been fighting from the beginning. Sometimes the thing that looks like a trap is actually a door. Sometimes the person who seems to be your jailer becomes your protector. And sometimes, in the strangest, most twisted way, what begins as possession transforms into something that can only be called love. I was his and he was mine. Not because he'd claimed me, but because I had chosen to claim him back. If the story moved you, please like and subscribe. Comment below if you think Mila ultimately made the right choice in forgiving Nikolai. Sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves, and what we're willing to sacrifice for those we love.